It's amazing. Do I have the clicker? Yeah.
Oh, clicker comes.
Yeah, thanks. No, really, I mean, I'm really overwhelmed. This is great to hear. And thank you so much once again. And actually, I saw the program and I thought, oh, what a shame. I wish I could stay here longer, all the way till Saturday. But unfortunately, my flight combinations didn't work that well, and I gotta be leaving tomorrow morning. So it's a shame I'm gonna be missing the rest of it. But I mean, and now I mean it, okay? This stage, this setting, this gathering, I think is the most beautiful place I've been invited to give a talk into. No, really, this is awesome. This is absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much. And wow, and I can see you are comfy, right? Well done on the questions. Anyway, yeah, actually, some of the speakers, the previous speakers, I think the lady from the botanical garden, she mentioned this thing about something which I really resonate with, which is education, right? I don't have a laser here, right? Pointer? No? Okay, doesn't matter. You see the word education, right? So let's forget about Planta Sapiens. Let's think of education itself. Because I think not everybody is either working in a botanical garden or close enough to botanics or have the lack of the possibilities that many of us have. And I think that education is really the key. I mean, I worry more and more all the time, you know, even from the epilogue in Planta Sapiens, it is just like, to me, education is the topic, the issue. I mean, there is nothing we're going to do without getting to think hard about it, especially about how to change it, okay? That's something clearly very much needed. We've got to do something about it. But anyway, yeah, so apart from being still a little bit jet-lagged, I'm also kind of impressed by what I found there. This is not Western scientists. This is Buddhist monks. They are, you know, different spiritual tradition, different set of, you know, different everything, I would say, right? And we had the chance to chat with His Holiness and hand him a copy of the book. What do you reckon? Okay, guys, now it's your turn. I gave my talk. Thank you very much. Now you go. So what do you reckon? What do you think was His Holiness' take on Planta Sapiens? I told him, hey, His Holiness, plants are sapient, okay? Plants are sapient in as much as animals are meant to be sapient, okay? They are sentient. So who wants to guess? What did he respond? Okay? Yeah, who said of course? Who said yes? Yeah? Right? Okay? Anyone wants to take sides on the other side? Or we all agree that? Right, okay? Well, no way. He was as close, narrow-minded, and stubborn as Western scientists are. That's why I started with the word education. I meant it. We need to do something about it. But check. I mean, actually, I just picked this book. They gave us a complimentary copy of one of his books, and I was reading this book back on the way, flying back from India. And I just couldn't believe it. If an organism can move its whole body from one place to another to escape danger and survive, or to obtain food and to reproduce, then it may be regarded as a sentient being. Oh my God. Well, for one thing, why don't you just stick an only here to say only then? Because otherwise, if there is not an only there, well, yeah, sure. I mean, you can be regarded as sentient if you do that type of stuff. But take these guys. I mean, that's a rice root, right? Check. Exploring, survival, reproduction, checking out for nutrients. I mean, that's a route which is pretty much in the same business as animals are, right? I would say so. Don't you reckon? I mean, looks like, you know, very exploratory behavior, right? It's got to, you know, check out the surroundings. There might be a patch of soil, or nutrient-rich soil, or water, whatever. But they do care about what's going on, of course. And in a sense, if you think about it, they might be meeting the criteria that, to His Holiness, were required for sentience, right? In fact, we took some time in this paper last year, this came out 2021, and we took some time to actually go through it, right? And say, hey, what is it that plants can do that we might regard as sentience or consciousness here in the title of the paper, or cognition, or intelligence, or sapiens, as I say, right? So, and we don't mean it metaphorically. So we are not like trying to say, hey, they behave as if, they kind of, you might want to look at. No, it's not that you need to make an effort to try to, it's a game of wishful thinking or make-believing. No. We truly mean to say that plants communicate and need to make their own decisions, not simply grow into words, this nutrient patch, but hey, I need to grow one way or another. They recognize their king as opposed to non-king, and they make decisions according to that, right? Hey, this guy sitting next to me, oh, he's king. Okay, I'm not going to bother him. We're friends. Better if we organize ourselves for the good of the collectivity, right? So they are able, of course, to sense, degrees of risk. Things can be, things can go wrong, and you need to be aware of that. Not simply responding to what's happening right now. I know this is bad news for me, but what might be bad news in the future? So you need to be able to anticipate, right? Truly anticipate, right? You've got to be able, hey, it's not simply, maybe when I get there, it's too late to change gear, to go for plan B. So you better know if something might be wrong in the future. You better be able to, to think ahead of time. Oh, I don't want to get there. I might be in trouble, right? So anticipatory behavior is the name of the game. If you want to behave not just reactively, but proactively, to be ahead of time, ready to respond to what's going to happen next, right? So plants, well, and what about learning? I mean, now we are running many experiments on learning. Remember that pea plant, we saw some pea plants there in that decoration, you have the artwork there. And pea plant is a very dear species to me because we are doing some experiments. Most of you will be familiar with Monica Galeano's experiments on pea plant learning, like associative learning. So they would learn the way animals do, like Pavlov's dog, associative learning. And we are performing some intriguing experiments of where this might lead. Nothing to report for the moment, this is work in progress, but just to let you know that sure, we need to think hard about how to customize, how to use those animal-based protocols, because not just dogs need to associate the stimuli. Life itself needs to be making meaning of the surroundings. Hey, this might mean that. Oh, I need to connect the two. See what I mean? So all that is very much needed. Of course, they've got to compete and forage for resources. I mean, that's the name of the game. This is evolution. You've got to adapt. Well, I don't think we're going to have time in 30 minutes, but maybe later on in discussion during the day, but there are some awesome examples of mimicry. I just dropped those slides down. It's not going to be time for that, but believe me, there is some amazing stuff going on, and plants are able to do it. The type of competencies, all this, that if I told you, hey, there is this creature, this organism, I don't tell you who it is, but it's able to communicate, make decisions, recognize the king, sense risk, anticipate, behave anticipatorily, this. You say, of course, it's got to be an animal, right? When you say it's a plant, then they downgrade it. They say, okay, if it's a plant, let's think of another explanation. This cannot be real learning. This cannot be real anticipatory behavior. That's what animals do, not you guys, right? Numerosity, we know from Venus flytrap, you have some carnivorous plants down there. Those guys can count till 5. For example, the Venus flytrap, right? You know that you touch it twice, it closes the trap, but you keep touching the insect inside when it's already enclosed into the leaves. Then 3, 4, 5, until it gets to 5, the plant won't start secreting the digestive enzymes. So they can count to 5. Of course, that's proto-numerosity. We are not talking numbers, doing numbers the way we humans do, but we are talking about different competencies related very abstractly throughout the tree of life, right? And plants can do many of those. And well, think of collective intelligence. Think of schools of fish, flocks of birds. Well, think of the roots apparatus of many plants below ground, what we don't see, that we don't appreciate. A lot of underground talk these days here, so I'm sure you can resonate to that. But so all in all, one thing we need to do, we do in the lab, apart from doing electrical recordings of the inner activity, of course, if you want to appreciate plant behavior, you better time lapse because they are damn slow. It's not their fault. That's what they need to be. It's the speed they need. They don't need to be fast the way we are, right? And if you time-lapse them, that's a tomato plant. This is a cuscuta, a parasitic plant that cannot do photosynthesis. So that little plant cannot make its own food. It needs to reach for a host to suck up its nutrients. So it will be sucking up the sugars from the tomato plant, right? But not just that, of course. It will be able to choose to decide, hey, this plant here is richer, is more juicy, has more sugars for me to suck than this wheat, say wheat, some other plant, which is way poorer in terms of nutrients. So it will grow target-oriented manner. So it will grow towards the tomato plant and not the wheat. But if the tomato is not around, it will go for the wheat. Okay, not a big meal, but better than nothing. Yeah, it's got to decide on the fly because things change. Things never remain static or constant, never are the same. So things might change. I need to be up for that, right? I need to be ready to change gear when the need arises, right? So in a sense, they are way, way more important than we think, okay? And we need to regard them and look at them and learn from them with a fresh, new eye, okay? Now, why, some people complain about the title of the book. They say, Sapiens, Planta Sapiens? No, this is Sapiens, right? So again, it's difficult for us to get rid of this obsession with the animal kingdom. Why are we so obsessed with animals? I mean, that's not a rhetoric question. Think about it. Why? Are you obsessed with animals? I'm not, but I don't know why, I mean, really. So if you think of just think of us within the animal kingdom. So even though, like the quote you saw from Harari's book, Sapiens, like, okay, yeah, some people might be outraged. We are just one more animal species in the animal kingdom. But even if you zoom back and think of the whole animal kingdom, then what you see is that we are still obsessed with something that belongs to us and only to us, right? And this is, for example, neural conduction. Having neurons, having nervous systems, central nervous system or neural tissue, right? So this is all just part of, if you see that's metazoa. So this is just all the different branches that evolved, the different adaptations that were found at some point in time within the animal kingdom, right? And when you see this, the type of innovations that appear, here the first time we had neurons, nerve nets, or all the way to having the sacrosanct mammalian neocortex. We think we are so special because we have a neocortex. I have a neocortex. Wow, I can do what I have to do, because it's not what the plants have to do. So we need to really think twice why we think we are so special, right? So what's actually, now I can get rid of the book because I was keeping it in my hands to remind myself of this. I just bought it yesterday here. So I was meeting Peter at the town hall square. I was killing some time and I found this bookshop and I thought, I'm gonna check this book. Oliver Sacks, okay? The River of Consciousness, right? It's funny because he gets started with Darwin, the botanist. So Darwin, the one that was marveled at the behavior of plants, right? And all this Darwin going on here, and then I keep browsing the book, and then up to a point, let's get to the chapter of consciousness, because it is the river of consciousness. He's going to talk about consciousness throughout the tree of life. I was excited. I was, yes, this is it, right? Oliver got it. Not the Dalai Lama, but Oliver got it. And then there comes Oliver Sacks, and in the middle of the book says, hey, now that we have nerves, yeah, we can talk business, we can talk sentience. I said, I cannot take it any longer. What's so special about animals? I don't get it, okay? So what do we need to do? Okay, let's zoom back, let's enlarge the picture, right? So what does it mean to enlarge the picture? So let's go, over 1 billion years ago. So, let's go to our last eukaryotic common ancestor. So before plants and animals branched apart, when we were all the same, right, our ancestors. So now all these guys that you saw here, right, all this variety that people are amazed at, is simply here. That's just a little tip. All poor animals here. And we have fungi, which we forget that we are so similar to them. And one thing Oliver reminded me this morning was that we do share with plants 70% of DNA. So not 90-something like chimps, but 70% is, it's a decent amount being shared. So why don't we take more seriously what happened here before this fork took place, before plants and animals split apart, right? Well, one thing that happened is that simply, out of that primitive eukaryote that we all are, so to speak, is deeply coded in our genes, well, plants were able, or the ancestors of plants were able to incorporate one plastid that was eventually the chloroplast, allowing plants to do photosynthesis from a photosynthetic bacteria. So, oh, that came pretty handy. I don't need to go shopping. I can just do photosynthesis. You guys, you need to go shopping. You better hurry up. You better go and move. Come on, go and buy your food and cook your dinner. I don't need to do any of that. I can remain sessile. I can be rooted. And I do my shopping on the spot without moving, right? So that was the difference. Changing a sessile lifestyle for a one that resides on locomotion. But locomotion, remember the words of His Holiness, appears to be what connects you to being, to the capacity to being sentient. And I just don't get that, right? Let me just skip this. I have the watch. I don't want to be over time. But think about it. Even if we were, or even if neurons or neural talk was that important, well, all these chemicals, okay, are being used by plants. So plants use them. So the molecules themselves are being shared in the tree of life. They don't belong to the animal kingdom, right? We are so obsessed with belonging to us that we say, hey, this is what they are called in our case. They are neurotransmitters. The same molecule playing a similar role like a signaling, being a signaling molecule like GABA. GABA is a signaling molecule in plants. Oh, no, they don't call, no, these are not neuromodulators, right? Neurotransmitters, this is something else. It's a signaling molecule, the same one, used for their own purposes. Because remember, they are rooted, sessile, don't need to go shopping, but they have their own problems. They found their own solutions, right? So take glutamate. Oh, this is a great example. If you think of glutamate, again, we think of glutamate in animal terms, but plants resort to glutamate to allow for a calcium wave of activation to spread throughout the plant tissue, and bring news to what's happening if there is maybe a munching caterpillar. It's going to show up. Just look at the left corner. You will see a munching caterpillar there when I click. Okay, it's going to be fast. Now it's going to start munching, 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 munching. Zoom. You see the spread of the calcium wave spread? Okay, it's so nice that we can, oh, sorry. Yeah, you see it? Now, here, the same. You apply the glutamate. You couldn't see that properly. Okay? You see munching caterpillar, spread of activation. The glutamate goes off, spread of activation, so zoom, explodes, information processing. Information flows throughout the whole plant. Communication is needed. Hey, somebody's munching on my leaf. I want to convey the message, the red flag, to the rest of the plant, to put in practice preemptive measures, to be ahead of time, to be proactive and not simply react when maybe it's too late. See what I mean? Right, okay, so how many of you, I'm just curious because of this idea we thought of how we are conveying this in school, how many of you were familiar with plants being able to put them to sleep, that we can anesthetize plants, right? Okay, so that's something, that's normal, okay? That's as normal as in me going with a Venus flytrap to the veterinary school. So I went to the veterinary hospital, took a Venus flytrap, put in the machine that they used to put to sleep dogs and cats, so in the vet school, and that's isoflurane, the same molecule, and plants respond to the very same anesthetic. So you can put a plant to sleep with the very same anesthetic that is being used by vets, okay? And that's not a coincidence. Remember, tree of life, way back before the bifurcation, we are all the same, right? So signaling molecules, anesthetics, they all work. So look, just look at the top picture. You know mimosa, you don't need to time-lapse. You can just record them to the naked eye. You can see it real fast. If you touch it, it falls, okay? That will fall. Now, the bottom picture, left, anesthetized specimen. If you touch it, look, nothing, no response, okay? Once you put it to sleep, it won't respond anymore. It won't fold as the upper one. You see the difference? It's, I'm going to say, something that people bother a lot about, sleeping, okay? Well, it lost awareness. It's not aware anymore of the surroundings. Doesn't feel the brush. It's not folding, okay? Now, people don't like me talking like this, but wait, you'll see. It can only get worse. This will only get worse. But I hope you understand that I'm not speaking metaphorically. I'm talking about molecules. GABA, glutamate, isoflurane, okay? Now, what is really intriguing is to think what happens when you come out of anesthesia. Check here. Now, I come out of anesthesia, you touch me, I start to fold, if only, really slowly, because the anesthetics is still wearing off. Now, I'm kind of, if any of you have gone through surgical operation, what happens when you come out of anesthesia? You're still like, hey, what happened? Where am I? Right? So it takes some time for the drug to wear off, right? So you're still kind of going back to normal, to what you were before you were put to sleep. See what I mean? So put it this way, if we think of plant sentience, if we think of plant sense of awareness, a very basic sense of awareness, of course, their sense of awareness, the one they need for their purposes, right? If you think of plants along those lines, what is it that you are regaining, that you had lost temporarily? You see? A whole different picture emerges. I'm regaining something that I had lost temporarily, if only temporarily. If a dog or a cat is put to sleep, and then it wakes up and, hey, yeah, back to normal, yeah, it's aware now, yeah. We don't have any problem with that. Why don't we see it along the same lines? Because it doesn't locomote, because it has no neurons. See what I mean? This is Italian. For the Italian audience in the cloud. Madonna. Right? Now, okay, let's see what happens with sleep. Sleep, we all know if you are jet lagged like as I am right now, if you can't quite catch sleep at night, what happens many times? You take a melatonin tablet, right? Some people do, okay? You don't need to confess it here. But some people, I heard that some people take those tablets, right? To be able to get back and sleep, right? So we know that melatonin has an effect in fish, in mammals. Now it's being studied in Drosophila, it's being studied in worms. So again, we don't have any complex, inferiority complex. We think, oh, yeah, sure, okay, this is an animal kingdom thing. Let's see the role melatonin plays across the animal kingdom. But what happens when a legume falls its leaves at night? You know what happens? Shall I tell you? If you just time-lapse the plant, this is what you will see, okay? They will do like this. Morning, sunsets, sunrises, sunsets, okay? I say it's going to bed, right? And then people complain, Paco is overinterpreting the data, blah, blah, blah. Right? But in a sense, of course, the circadian clock is there. I mean, nature, all forms of life tick to the circadian clock, to the planetary 24-hour day-night cycle. That's nothing special. Of course, that's the best cues you have. That's highly informative because it's a type of regularity that has been ruling life on Earth since, right? So what does it mean? It means that, of course, no big surprise that any form of life whatsoever found a way to tick to that regularity because it's very informative. Oh, predators are out. I better hide. Oh, time to save energy, or time to go out and hunt, time to do photosynthesis, time to whatever it is that you have to do, right? So, in a sense, people might say, hey, Paco, don't get excited, as you usually do. This is just an ecdynastic movement. They fold their leaves at night, legumes do, they unfold them in the morning, and it's circadian-based. It's the clock being there. Fine. But how about if I tell you that the peak of melatonin levels goes up just before the sun sets and they fold their leaves. And melatonin disappears in the morning and throughout the day, as in animals. So plants biosynthesize their own melatonin. And we only found out in 1995. And the plant community only agreed how to label that molecule, which is the same molecule our pineal gland secretes, in 2004. So we are talking 2 decades ago. They said, okay, now we acknowledge it. They secrete, they biosynthesize their own melatonin, but let's call it phytomelatonin. Yeah? Officially, it's called phytomelatonin, the same molecule. But they had to stick the prefix just to feel that they are not stealing something that belongs to us. Oh, melatonin, the one in the pineal gland. We mammals have melatonin. So what? I mean, see what I mean? So anesthetics works on plants. Melatonin puts them to sleep, but we don't want to use the word sleep. But still, the concentration rises right before folding their leaves and wears off during the day. The very same profile that you find in concentration of melatonin in animal species, right? So you see what I mean? Something awkward is going on here. Now, we know the role of melatonin in all these, in plants, I mean, right? So this is the role of phytomelatonin in plants. It does all those things, right? We know it does all that stuff. But the problem is that we still treat it from the perspective of physiology. So we say, yeah, sure. Any molecule you highlight, anything you want to share with the skeptics in the scientific community, they could say, yeah, sure, so what? I mean, decision-making, why do you need to say plants are making their own decisions? Why don't you just give the physiological level of description of the phenomenon? Something is going on physiologically, and the plant does this or does that. You don't need to call it decision-making. I always go, and why do you call it decision-making in animals? Why don't you say it's just animal physiology? Right? So this is what happens with higher vascular plants, right? They have the vascular system, the xylem and the phloem. Apologies, because that's in Spanish. But in the xylem and the phloem, those are the pathways that physiologically speaking, if you take it strictly speaking in physiological terms, those are the pathways for the transport, for the translocation of substances. Water, nutrients, minerals, sugars, all goes up and down throughout the vascular tissue that connects the whole plant body, right? It's connecting the whole plant body. Well, guess what? We can change gear, and that's what we propose in a couple of papers, and we say, hold on a sec, why are we speaking of plant physiology and focus exclusively on the way those substances are being translocated throughout the vascular system, the phloem and the xylem pathways? Why don't we speak from a psychological perspective, as we do with animals, of an information processing system? Why do we need to speak in those terms? Put it that way. So I assume the burden of proof. I need to justify speaking in those terms. Well, you need to speak in terms of information processing precisely because the plant is not simply responding to light. That's a cartoon interpretation of plant behavior. Oh, light, phototropic behavior. I go for light. Oh, gravity, I grow my roots, right? Oh, a chemical, so it's not like one-to-one. Plants are not responding on a one-to-one basis to one source of stimulation. They need to integrate all those informational channels. What's happening above ground, below ground, orchestrate it all to deliver a response that is active at a global scale, so that is globally adaptive. I need to trade off. I need to find a compromise in between different needs, different risks. This might be risky or not, depending on what else is happening around me. If something else is going on here, I might take this risk. If nothing else is going on here, I might ignore the risk. So you might wait and counterbalance because things only make sense within a global economy that the system is embedded into. See what I mean? So when you take this signaling at the systemic level, at the level of the whole plant, then you're speaking not of the physiological response, but of the whole pattern of complex, sophisticated behavior. Now we are speaking of adaptive behavior, plant behavior being adaptive, but being flexible. It's got to be flexible enough to do all that. Hey, to trade off, to counterbalance, to compensate. Flexible enough. It's got to be anticipatory, as we said before. It's got to be goal-directed. I want to get there. I'm meaning-making, right? So when you have all those things, you understand them along the same lines as information processing systems. And by the way, this is an ugly slide, but very informative, because it gives you, we took some time to collect all these parameters, and that gives you an idea of what I said about behavior being understood as cartoon-based. Anything but cartoon-based. So not just they respond to light, they respond to all that things going on the light dimension, temperature, mechanical stimulation, vibrations, water, gravity, soil, electrical signals, blah, 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 blah. And within those, volatile chemicals, check all the different type of volatile chemicals they might be responding to. So just think that by themselves, any of that dimensions give you such a rich palette to understand how their behavior makes sense from their own perspective, what matters to them, what counts to them, despite being sessile, despite being rooted, right? But on top of that, you've got to remember that those things are sources of stimulation, internal or external, that they need to integrate and respond in a global scale. So that's why plants have to be understood from within psychology and not from within physiology. Just an example to finish. Oh, 90 seconds left, look. Roots can grow upwards, then they can change gear and grow downwards. So that's an example of the integration of information. In that case, when we were, right? That pattern of growth, initial pattern of growth upwards, is the way a root grows when it has no more room, no more space to grow. It cannot perform a U-turn. But if you shine it from above with a white light, being photophobic, they thin themselves to have enough room to do the U-turn. So you cannot say they are blindly following the almighty gravity vector and always growing downwards. Depending on the local conditions, they might be growing differently, and they might be finding this need to check out what else is happening along other dimensions, other sensory channels, and make meaning of their surroundings and their interest from that unified perspective. So, talking about unification, if there is anything that counts, according to me, and opposing to the Western tradition, reductionist or mechanistic tradition, and to the intuitions, in this case of His Holiness, and of any other school, that was just an example of the experience I had, but that applies across the board, is that if there is anything about sentience, is that it unites us all. Us all, I mean, in the tree of life itself, right? And the only way to get the message across is to take seriously education. There is no other way we're going to be able to transmit the message, right? So thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Paco.
Yeah.
You gave a really explosive speech in spite of your jet lag.
You see?
And I think you would make a wonderful, wonderful lawyer for plants. Yes.
About it.
Now, as online audiences are still waiting, you have the word. In order to pose a question, just please show us with your hand, and our assistants will get a microphone to you. Otherwise, the audiences won't hear the question, and they don't understand what's going on. Yeah. So, please, questions to Paco Calvo.
Oh, I'm going to sit.
So, our quantum physician.
If to come back to Homo sapiens, then I think your talk is kind of implying that thinking of our brain is only part of our intelligence. How much you know about the other parts of the intelligence we have?
Oh, certainly. I mean, absolutely. So one of the obsessions we have is that this neurocentric attitude. It doesn't pay due respect to many other levels of description. Well, take subcortical activity if you are obsessed with the neocortex, but of course hormonal flows. We know the role of hormones. But here there is something even more interesting, which is nowadays we speak of in cognitive science we speak of 4E, like 4E cognition, which is the 4 E's are embodied, embedded, enactive, extended. The 5th E, which is ecological. And all this is what they remind us is that cognition, intelligence, sapiens, even though in part it has to do with that neural hardware that we appreciate so much, is not exclusively related to it, and it's just part of the equation. So interestingly, many of the things we are able to do, we do them by outsourcing the computing tasks to non-neural tissue. So that's what it means to do embodied cognitive science. Take even that's inspiration, that's being a source of inspiration even for robotics. Think of when you are designing a robot, inspired in an animal. Sometimes you don't solve a task, robotics, for the robot by crunching more code lines. It's not about writing more lines of code into the algorithm. Sometimes it's simply done by allowing the system, for example, in soft robotics, to be made of soft materials. And those soft materials by themselves allow for the task to be performed. So in non-neural or non-information processing terms. So I entirely agree that even if there was a split in between plant and animal behavior and sentience and intelligence, we would still need to rethink what we mean about our own sapiens, even if it was exclusively ours.
Hi, I'm Tina, here. Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk, and I've been thinking a lot also about how we organize or perceive intelligence. So I was just thinking if in your work, so I'm forming the question while I'm thinking, so maybe it'd be messy, but I was wondering if you yourself distinguish in this work, are you trying for plants to make more room or expand what intelligence means, so they're like rising with the animals, or wishing to reorganize itself of what intelligence is, and like not this hierarchical order. And just it's more a question of, as you said, on education, right? If we have this perception of the pinnacle of intelligence is humans and animals, and we are raising others with them, what is an important maybe component of like reorganizing this kind of hierarchical?
Yeah, thanks. No, that's a very important question. In fact, one of the mistakes we usually make, when I said we are going to have to customize animal protocols in the learning literature, for example, Pavlov's dog, let's customize that protocol and apply it to plants. One of the mistakes is to think that when trying to unearth patterns of plant intelligence, we need to try to make them closer or resemble what we find in animals. And precisely in the very same way that we said that we have to go shopping and they don't have to go shopping, they might not need to perform things that we do. So it's not a competition to make them look the way we look. But with that being said, we need to pay attention to both ends of the spectrum, which is, what is it that makes any species in itself exclusive? There is something to the specific way in which each of us solves our daily problems that nobody else does. So we are special in a sense, each of us, across the species and even individuals in the same species, because my context is different from yours, because I live in Spain and you live here, so we do different things because our context change, right? But on top of that, it's always important to remember that some things have worked in the past, in evolutionary scale. And evolution, if one thing it does good, is not to get rid of things that work. So there is a principle of evolutionary conservatism. Things that do work, we keep them, we conserve them, right? So in a sense, we need to check at both ends to say, hey, what makes you truly special and what unifies us all? So in that sense, I would like to think of the study of plant intelligence as allowing us to truly understand what makes them special, but also to find for the underlying universal principles that govern the tree of life itself. Thanks.
Paco, I have a very short, provocative question. If plants possess all those features that you have described, and if their behavior and inner movements can be described as psychological, then it seems to me that maybe they do not just possess intentions, but if they will start integrating everything from the surroundings, then they also make up something or compose something that we call meaning.
Sure.
So plants have meanings in their lives, but meanings and meaning, that is something that we need to communicate with each other.
I see.
And so basically, if plants have meanings and we have meanings, we have meanings of words, and sometimes we have meanings we have not yet found words for, but hope to find sometimes later on. Then it's possible that basically we could communicate with plants via meanings, and basically that means we could talk to the trees.
I see what you mean. So the short answer is I don't have the scientific evidence that is the case. Okay. So as of today, I don't have any evidence that I can share with you that allows me to make that inference. With that being said, science should be sufficiently open to explore. So we shouldn't deny things a priori. If it's an open empirical question, so be it. So a different issue is where would you bet? Where would you put your money if you had to bet, right? So there is meaning-making. Yes, there is meaning-making. There is communication. Yes, there is communication. There is interspecies communication. Certainly. Now, what sort of interspecies communication has evolved in time? Well, whenever there was a pattern of interaction that shaped them both under coevolution principles, say flowers and pollinators. Certainly there is communication in between flowers and pollinators. They need each other. Certainly there's communication between magnolia trees and beetles. You know, one of the oldest flowering tree with, by the way, with no scent. They don't emit scent because, you know why? Because honeybees weren't here yet. So beetles was the type of pollinator that could pollinate the magnolia trees. So the flowers, they evolved, made sense for beetles. Later, all this explosion of colors, scents, all this came later when you had honeybees and many other sophisticated pollinators that could catch the colors, pick on this, pick on that, right? But whether there is interspecies communication, that's out of the question. Of course there is. Whether there is interspecies communication in between trees and humans, that's for scientists to put on the bench the type of empirical hypothesis that we could then test. But as of today, I don't know of any scientific study that reports positive evidence.
Any more questions? Oh, here is one.
Hi. So you said that there is a whole spectrum of intelligence and different degrees and different kinds, and I fully agree. I'm just curious, for you, where is the end of that spectrum? Is there something that is certainly not intelligent, or is it basically intelligence all over, just different degrees?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, actually, intelligence doesn't require you to be smart, right? So we have an idea of intelligence as that thing being done by the guy sitting at the wheel, doing the driving in my head. But there is not anyone doing any driving in my head. That's an illusion, right? So there is not an I, a mini Paco sitting here deciding things. It's an emergent phenomena out of trillions of cells firing and connecting to each other and doing things in a context of bodily and environmental things. So it's the whole entangled web of neuronal, bodily, and environmental factors. That means that intelligence, whether how graded it is or whether there is higher or lower degrees of intelligence, they don't belong to the individual as such. So I won't be able to crack open the skull of an individual and, hey, what is intelligence? Oh, it's not sitting here. Oh, yeah, there it is. No, intelligence is a relational property. It belongs to the organism environment system as such. So I'm saying this because you might say, hey, bacteria, unicellulars, are they intelligent? And you might say, that's a very stupid thing, just a cell doing blah, blah, blah. And then say, hold on a sec. Don't think of the intelligence of the bacteria. Think of the intelligence of the bacteria-environment. The unit of analysis is the couple system. And as such, you will see patterns that are truly intelligent, but emergent, and without thinking that somebody has got to be doing the driving inside the cell, the bacteria in this case. So smartness, how smart, how sophisticated pattern of behavior is not that we'll keep growing up because we are simply more complex in terms of number of cells, constitution, connections. It's more difficult to measure. and will give us a lot of surprises, I bet.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering if you are willing to go beyond the tree of life, like to the physical systems that we would not.
Okay, I'm aware of some theoretical physicists, mainly, that have crossed that line. I don't think I'm ready to cross it, but not because I have any preconception or that I have any, because I don't have any intuition. So I don't have any informed opinion that is worth sharing other than like anyone else. So I don't have anything to contribute in that debate. But who knows? Again, open empirical questions.
Thanks.
So we have time for one more question.
Hey, so a lot of your talk was trying to convince us to use, let's say, the terminology that we use so far for animals, like behaving and intelligence and so on, and now that we should use it for plants as well. But I think it's kind of a dead-end approach in a sense that animal behavior usually is very linear. Their whole life is they are just chasing resources. Their kind of main principal behavior is to maximize resource use because everything else depends on it, how well they get along, what is their fitness and so on. But in case of plants, they are not resource maximizers but optimizers, which means that they have to work on different ways at the same time. And therefore, if we try to use the same, let's say, behavioral terminology that we use for animals, we try to apply for plants, it might not work out because it constrains us too much.
Okay, I see your point, but regardless of whether it's maximizing or optimizing, one key point, maybe I didn't have the time to do it clearly in 30 minutes, but to me, one very important point is to think that we are not just rethinking plant intelligence, we are rethinking our own intelligence and all those predicates. So when we speak of learning, we need to rethink what we mean by animal and human learning. So it's not just that the label is there, agreed upon and set in stone. It's that we need to revise the very terminology. And once you revise it, neutrally speaking, so it's not customized or tailor-made for animals or humans, then you'll see that we can learn a lot by putting them together. Take the example of action potentials. If you go to a dictionary entry and you look it up, just try, look it up, action potential, in the Oxford Dictionary, whatever, you will find the definition along these lines, the firing along a neuronal cell, right? So it's speaking of the firing of a neuronal cell, instead of speaking of the firing of a neuron by, the exchange of ions across the membrane and the triggering of the electrical potential. No, why do you need to tie it to the neuron itself? So learning, if you go to the definitions of learning, they speak of, or behavior, they speak of the response to internal or external stimulation in the form of overt locomotive behavior. Why do you need to tie it or tailor-made along those lines? So the wider, the more neutral the definition is, the more encompassing and the more you are able to see that things that look different end up being the same. But of course, to do that, you cannot keep the definition as such and try to force plants into that mold. You need to get started from scratch and see how and whether animals, human and non-human animals, and plants and fungi and bacteria fit the bill. So along those lines, that's my recommendation, because otherwise I would assume that the debate is lost, because we end up even subconsciously trying to fit a plant into an animal mold, and that's something we shouldn't be doing. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Paco.
Thank you.
It was really, really inspiring. And from Biotoopia to you, Estonian folk tales, The Heavenly Wedding.
Oh, thank you so much.
Not just about animals, but all kinds of life forms.
Creatures.
Of creatures, yes, exactly. Because Estonians are pagan nation.
Yeah.
So,
thank you so much.
Thank you once more.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.